Over to you, Rebel.
Thank you, Ganesh.
I'm
So,
just going to launch the.
yes, please launch the PowerPoint. Meanwhile, I'll just start introducing myself. Ganesh did an amazing job of that, but I thought I'll add a few things. Growing up, I was always seen as an outcast or somebody that didn't really fit in because my love for animals and those who didn't speak up for themselves was overwhelming and to most people on the outside, very confusing. But that has been the biggest driving force behind what I've ended up doing with my life today. And I'm so grateful for these differences. And one of the very big things that I underline is that our differences, in a sense, is what unites us. Because the truest truth is that we are all different. We are all unique. A lot of my sessions, I will work in talking about this mathematical chance that you exist being a miracle. And I found that a lot of people resonate with that. And I realized that this is something that I wished somebody would have told me growing up. So I've been with horses since the time I'm 5. My dad was somebody who was always over the top, which, I mean, when I turned 5, he was like, okay, you've been asking for horses for 5 years, so let me go rescue 5 horses for you. So at age 5, I was this spoilt little forest princess whose dad had brought her home 5 horses. That quickly turned to 6 when he brought home Flame. So Flame is my oldest friend, and she's been with me since I'm 5. She's the one who taught me everything about anger management, about discipline, about self-care, about needs, not just wants, not just quirks. And Flame has been my truest and bestest friend. Over time, over the years, I slowly thought about what could I be doing with my life. And then when I turned 15, the horse that I had grown up with, one of the original 6, along with Flame, her name was Flash, she passed away. And there was quite a story there because Flash and I had spent our childhoods together along with me and Flame. But when I was 12, I got kicked in the face. You'll see I have a scar here and I'm missing several permanent teeth. So once again, my passion made me an outcast because my accident made me look different, made me speak differently. I had to relearn how to talk. I had 70 stitches. I was on a liquid diet for about 2.5 years at the age of 12. So then when I turned 15 and that horse with whom I had had that accident passed away, I was like, okay, maybe it's time to, get out of horses and let it go. And that's when I became really severely depressed. I wouldn't have named it that at that time, but I know now that that's what it was. So every time I'd walk out of home, I'd pass the paddocks. And for some reason, my soul felt like it was lacking a heartbeat. It was like the very essence of what had created all of the good in my life, all of this discipline, all of these skills that I had of empathy and being there for others came from them. And without them, who am I now? And slowly, my dad also realized, and he was like, you know what? This can't happen. It's time that we do something about it. So then in 2015, we went to a place called Antiur, where they were hosting a sale for horses. And we went there with the intention of getting 1 or 2 horses and seeing, if it was a good fit. Oddly enough, on the 12th of August, exactly some 7 years after my initial accident, no, wait, yeah, I was 18, so 6 years after my initial accident, I brought home my first 2 horses. After that, I thought, okay, what am I gonna do? So I decided I would just work on natural horsemanship and build a relationship with my horses that was built on teamwork, kindness, and non-violence at its core. To use only positive reinforcement and never use negative reinforcement. So then I suddenly realized that once you give up this idea of control and this need for holding on to stuff, you can really have a teammate. And that's when the whole realm of communication, self-care, and all of that opened up to me from the perspective of a horse. So let's go through a few of the differences between us and horses. There's a few that are pretty obvious. We're predators, they're prey. So we ascertain that because our eyes are forward facing and prey animals have sideways facing eyes. This is a physiological response to a need for survival, right? So we are built that way, and that makes us predators. Still, as a prey animal, the horse is willing to collaborate with us. That's pretty interesting. That shows a certain level of curiosity and a want to connect. So, how do we communicate in a way that is respectful, that respects basic needs of one another, and all of these different aspects that we share? So, another difference would be that horses cannot lie. Horses can only create and recreate patterns in order to reach a certain outcome. So I realized that horses understood more about us and our patterns than we did about them. Because they're intrinsically living in the moment, our heart rate, hormones. And so I realized that they were actually the perfect partners in order to support neurodiverse individuals. And so I started thinking, okay, how can we open our doors? And so we got in touch with a school nearby. It's called Deepam. It's called Deepam School for the Differently Abled. And they have about 150 children that come to them for classes and, all kinds of therapies in order to help these children grow and build up a strong inner world and a strong capacity to cope with the outside world and its expectations. This was all started by a German lady, and she and my mother were quite close growing up. Her son and I were in the same class. So I got somehow lucky because she had that trust that, okay, maybe this could be something interesting for the kids. It was quite unheard of in India, whereas in Europe and all, it's been something that has happened for a long time. And so that's how we started out. And here on the left, the picture on the left, you'll see me with one of our students. His name is Purushot, and he's been coming for about 4 years. In total, the program's been running for 8 years. And in the last 4 years, he's developed his skills to the point where he could eventually in the future be employed by us. This has become evident to the school now that it has brought added value to his life. And a lot of the other children were nonverbal or incapable of expressing themselves in ways that were logical or made sense to us and our, how to say, process of understanding the world. So what I did, the first thing I did whenever new children came to class was I asked the facilitators, whoever would come along with the children, not to expect anything which is a norm to be something we would police here. For us, the most important thing is to allow the children and the horses to engage in things that are naturally occurring. One such phenomenon is called co-regulation. So much like children who need the closeness of their mother in order to be able to, take a deep breath and go from the sympathetic nervous system back to the parasympathetic nervous system. It's been found scientifically that horses are actually capable of being these anchors of co-regulation. Their magnetic heart field, I believe it's called, is 44 to 52 times wider than that of human beings. So their heart rate, their breathing, all of that influences us quite heavily. And it's a very beautiful sight to see. In nature, if you think about it, the herd is actually innately, constantly, authentically living in the now and responding to their needs. That makes them really diplomatic creatures, a kind of diplomacy that human beings seem to have forgotten about. And so, for me, the answer to why horses is because they have been as they are for many, many thousands of years, and they have accompanied humans along this journey of, populating the planet, taking families, nomadic tribes from place to place. And so they are interwoven with our history. And for any two entities that spend a given amount of time together, they will start learning from each other, right? So it was very clear to me when I started in 2018, 2019 to really explore this therapeutic aspect of horses that there was something innately, naturally there in that sense. The horses knew their job. I had to do nothing except just translate. I just had to be present and help the human make sense of what the horse was saying in their own way. And slowly, slowly, I started building the method that we use today. Ganesh, could we move to the next slide, please? So horses taught me that there are 7 very simple basic needs. The first being safety. I've added and comfort because comfort also helps lead to safety. However, at times, comfort can be the enemy of safety. Just putting that in there. Second is ingestion and excretion. So breathing, drinking, all of the good stuff that we need to do in order to maintain balance within our body. Third is body care, of which sleep is probably the most important. When we talk about self-check-ins, I really love people to do a self-check-in with the first 3 basic needs. It's a quick way of checking in and seeing how we're doing. So if I were to give this as an example today, I would say safety-wise, I'm feeling about 9 out of 10. It would be a 10 out of 10, however, I'm a little bit sick, so I don't know when I'm gonna sneeze or what I'm gonna do, so that brings me down to a 9. Ingestion and excretion, I haven't had much food today, and also I would say I'm at about a 4 out of 10. And in terms of body care and sleep, I spent the whole entire day resting so that I could feel better for this conversation, and I think it worked pretty well. So let's say I'm at a 6. So do you see how now we have a shared understanding of where I am at today? This is a tool I encourage everybody to use for themselves, within their family, within their relationships, in order to create a very unbiased, very simple image of where we are at today. So the 4th basic need is movement, the ability to move freely within given space. I think the pandemic has been one of the biggest teachers for humanity in terms of the necessities of free movement. Next is association, the ability to create associations outside of oneself, create relationships, maybe it doesn't have to be other human beings. It can be appreciating the trees, it can be loving the breeze, it can be taking the time to build a friendship with a wild animal, whatever it may be. Association is a critical part of well-being and therefore is a basic need. So play is an interesting one. It's actually the crossover of movement and association that creates play. And play in horses is very interesting because they will play fight. And they will act out all of the things that they would normally have to do in order to function well in a herd. They will practice these things as they grow, as they learn, but it'll always be under the guise of play. Number 7, territorialism. is actually one of the only basic needs that we have made horses to have. To make that make sense. So territorialism is there because human beings decided to take an animal which requires a lot of space and put them in a box. And so since then, horses are obliged to fight for their basic needs. And this fight means that they will act and react in ways that are divergent from their nature. Excuse my husband, he's just passing by with dinner. So I would like everybody to just take a moment and read through the 7 basic needs list and see if everyone is in agreement that these are usually the key 7 things for everybody's life. And if there's disagreement, I'd love to hear it. So in the images, you can see that one is mimicking my body language. In the first image, both of our right legs are folded and our left legs are down. In the second image, our right legs have landed and our left legs are standing. So you can see how mimicry is just completely existent everywhere in nature. And I feel like people do it too. Mirroring, copying. This is a very interesting thing because suddenly you can take a child that has never expressed a feeling of hunger, for example, and we started feeding treats to the horse. And suddenly this child was asking, oh, even they need to eat. And I was explaining to him, yeah, everything that is alive needs to eat in order to function. And then from then onwards, this child was reported back to me to be asking for lunch, to be asking for dinner, whereas before that child was never interested or didn't bother to see this as a necessity. So that was very heartwarming. All right, can we go to the next slide? So whenever we talk about trauma responses, there are 4 that come up, and these are shared amongst horses and humans. The first would be flight. So imagine, big event happens. Something is going on. You switch from parasympathetic mode, which is your rational thinking, thought processing systems, to reactive mode, to survival mode, to whatever happens, I need to stay alive. So your nervous system is going to do one of the following. It's going to trigger a huge adrenaline rush, which will make you run away, is the first option. And you can see that in the graph on the right, flight requires the least, so to speak, amount of energy. The second is fight. I don't know how the spelling got wrong there. Sorry. Sorry. So fight. So facing the threat, you can see that in the graph, this requires a larger amount of energy. For to fight, you're going to have to put your muscles and all of that into action in order to sustain it for a longer period of time until you have removed the trigger that has caused this reaction. Third is freeze. So freeze is also commonly known as the lizard brain, or in other words, is when your brain is misfiring. So firing so many process ideas, so many thoughts, so many things, so many options at once that your neurological systems no longer can make sense of it. And this can end in loss of consciousness or catatonia. The last response is fawn. And I believe that fawn is one that most of the population has not heard about. Fight, flight, freeze are common. And I know I've heard of them before I've started my work, but the concept of fawn is one that I got to know about only once I started working deeply on educating myself on psychology and mental health. So fawning is basically a preemptive response where you are going to, as the person fawning, you are going to try and appease the threat. You're going to try and do everything possible in order to make sure that whatever is threatening you is appeased or, justified, or you're going to do everything to minimize the options for you getting harmed. And usually that will come at the detriment of your basic needs. So it's likely that the person would then no longer go to the bathroom when they wanted to, because they wanted to make sure that they're there and present and be able to appease this person. And so it's going to create a dysregulation of the entire system. Fawning is one that has been very prevalent in a lot of my clients, and we found that the best way to describe fawning is somebody that has built up a construct. So a construct to me is something that has very sharp edges and aims to contain this person within a certain idea. It is sometimes self-built, sometimes built in by a partner, sometimes through relationships, sometimes through society. But it is this idea that we are exactly where we need to be, and there are reasons for which these things are happening to us, and they are usually because of us. Getting out of fawning usually requires a thought process called a constellation, where all of these edges of a construct get softened, where suddenly things that were seemingly strange and just outside are now a pathway in order to explore a different way of thinking. And then the person usually gets out of fawning and will decide whether they want to fight this ongoing problem with this person causing them issues, or if they just want to leave and de-escalate the situation. So fawning is also something I've seen my own son doing. Like if I come back from a very heavy day and I come in with my brows furrowed and a little bit looking like I've had an intense day, then he'll come up to me and he'll be like, "Oh, Mom, I'm sorry," preemptively trying to stop something, for example. And then I always try and take a deep breath and say, "Okay, he is noticing this through our co-regulation. So I need to find a way to reset." So this way of resetting is something that I have learned from the horses. Where if you ever look at, videos of horses in the wild or Mustangs or something, you'll see that whenever their senses are triggered, there's going to be a moment of pause where they're going to let their brain and their system determine what is the best course of action. And if there seems to be no threat, then they're going to do several things. One thing is that they're going to find neutral. So for me, finding neutral means having your body, your mind, your soul, and your senses in the same place. And when I say in the same place, I mean in the now, within a moment, within this happening. So tuning into sounds that one would normally not hear, taking deep breaths, making sure they're consciously all the way down to all of our toes, making sure to go through all of these things very consciously in order to become more in tune with the ongoings and so our inner realm. And therefore, we can go from a survival state back to a thought processing state. So the way that I teach my students at Horse to Human is first we find neutral. Then we put up our attention. What's going on around us? What's going on inside us? Next is set an intention. What do I want to accomplish in the coming time? Next is thought. How am I going to create the circumstances necessary for the outcome that I'm seeking? And the last is action. Yes, we can go to the next page. Thank you, Ganesh. So another thing that I ask my students to tune into are triggers. So triggers are things that make us feel unsafe or overwhelmed and have a tendency of being the most significant moment in switching from parasympathetic to sympathetic. something that is less spoken about, which is glimmers. As human beings, we tend to shout when we're upset and whisper words of joy. So I try and rebrand that a lot with my students in saying that we should give equal importance to joy and glimmers as we do to triggers. Constantly focusing on the negative can only increase the negative. So making sure we balance that out by knowing our triggers and our glimmers means that we have an opportunity not only to tip the scales, but also to be objective about our lives and the good things that also happen to us. So a trigger for a horse can be someone petting it without warning. The horse will flinch and step back. So interestingly enough, just like people, horses require consent in order to feel comfortable. So I always teach my students to offer an open hand and allow the horse to make first contact. As a predator, we can only ask a question. We shouldn't implore it. So a glimmer, for example, would be a skittish horse that softens as you slow your breath and take time to actively become present in the moment. Safety and feeling good is contagious, just like laughter, just like joy. So bringing that to the table is extremely important, and underlining these things means that we are able to create a space, sense of comfort in our day-to-day life, that we are having glimmers and that we can create more of them. So I like this quote that I've put at the bottom. Oh. So just like the horse, our nervous system can respond to subtle cues, tones, gestures, smells that remind us of past pain. It's not about logic, it's about felt safety. So for us, things that happen in the subconscious affect us just as much as the things that we decide upon. Because horses really, really live in the moment, they're a great example of just, okay, figure out your basic needs, figure out what's a necessity right now, take the first step to action towards that. They're really great teachers of, living in the moment, of being present and of understanding yourself integrally instead of just portions, instead of, oh, this is what society thinks of me. A horse will come at you and reflect who you are. Sometimes you don't like what you see. Sometimes it opens a perspective to see yourself in a softer light. And I've seen that with most of the children that I've worked with that are neurodiverse. The horses have brought to them something which humans didn't. Presence, holding space, not asking anything of them, not pushing them to do something, to be something, just being there. And I've seen that the biggest changes occurred not when I tried to change anything, but when I allowed life to happen. So, for example, we had one child, she was diagnosed with severe autism at around age 2. And her name is Yoga. And whenever she gets very, very, very happy, her response was actually violence, to grab somebody and shake them. And slowly, the first 2, 3 sessions, I really didn't know if I could help this girl, because anything I tried to do just did nothing. I decided, okay, let me just trust Flame, our oldest horsey, and my best friend since I'm a child, to see whether she can approach this child and do something. So at first, Yoga went up to Flame and started just holding onto her and moving her. And suddenly I realized that Flame looked relieved. So it was strange to me that a horse would feel relieved at such an aggressive statement. And that's when I realized horses don't judge according to action. They also judge according to intention, because they can hear your heart rate, because they can hear your breathing, because they can smell the hormones excreted in your sweat. They know more of what's going on than the mask that you've put on, than these patterns that you've set in place in order to survive and continue to live as comfortably as possible. And now yoga will come up to Flame, grab a brush, and get to brushing. She'll walk her through the forest. They'll have entire little adventures together, which in the beginning to me was pretty much unthinkable. I'm extremely proud that I learned to let go and let things happen and let things progress as they need to, remaining in my position as a translator and as a support person, rather than trying to change anybody. The horses do that all on their own. All I need to do is be a good, persistent, consistent mouthpiece for them. We can go to the next slide. So, mindfulness versus mindfulness. I think that the two are often mistaken for one another. Mindfulness is the art of being present, grounded. It uses sensory input in order to help us ground ourselves in a certain situation. Whereas your mindful is all of these thoughts, all of these anxieties, all of these regrets, all of these things that just keep running in your system. A lot of the students that come here who have been ostracized by society or their families end up being very mindful with all of these things of, oh, this is how I should have behaved, or this is how I should be, or this is how people perceive me, and so I need to work towards changing that. Or, people get very, very wrapped up in the way that they are viewed and in the way that life perceives them. And a lot of the time, what I say to these students of mine is that their duty in life is to be at least as nice to themselves as they're willing to be to other people. And if they're not capable of being as nice to themselves as they are to other people, then it's time to reconsider their main basic needs, to write them down, to take the time to really introspect, so that mindfulness becomes a part of their day-to-day, to take deeper breaths, to tune into the little sounds of the morning, the birds, to enjoy the sunshine on your cheeks, to build up a space in which inside of yourself you have this temple, this space, this safety, this comfort that can always be there, that is not waiting or expecting other people's to approve it, but for it to be there inherently because you deserve it, because each person has a right to have a space inside of themselves that brings them joy. Sorry, I'm sweating. So I can offer everybody one grounding tip is whenever as a carer you become overwhelmed, or as somebody suffering from a mental illness, whenever there are things that just become too much, try to check out of the thought process and check into your senses. What do you hear? What do you smell? What does the texture of your sweater feel like against your finger and your thumb? What does it feel like against your shoulders? How's that bead of sweat that's running down your shoulder? What's its path? What's its trajectory? And I found that this helps people take deeper breaths and bring themselves closer to who they truly are and more in line with their values, rather than spiraling out of control for things that they might not be able to change. Sorry, I think I'm going to sneeze. For everybody who joined us a little bit later, unfortunately, I woke up quite ill this morning. Hence, I will be having to blow my nose and sneeze a little bit. My apologies. All right. I think we can move to the next slide. So, the moment. For humans, living in the moment is a little bit different than for horses. So this big black circle with a thick outline represents the present. The yellow circle determines you yourself, so the I in the situation, and the blue circle represents another entity, another person. And whenever we interact, so whenever me and you interact, we create we. So the top circle, the green one, is the we. It is our relationship. So this relationship is one that is influenced by me, it is influenced by you, and it is unique to me and you. For horses, their frontal cortex is not as built up as humans. For humans, we think a lot about the past and we think a lot about the future. Horses can't do that. Horses authentically live in the now. So all of their reflections, all of their responses are going to be rooted in the present moment. That makes them excellent partners for therapy. It makes them an excellent support system for anybody looking to have an unbiased feedback from a team member that has no agenda other than to be present, other than to be united and in it with somebody else for the long haul, for something that is built towards a better life for both. Horses are natural born diplomats. Their ability to cope with any and all situations with each other is quite interesting. Horses will fight, but they will only fight when need outweighs availability. I found that to be quite inspiring because unless and until a need is not met, there is no requirement to have any kind of argument or confrontation. Horses have a very interesting way of living with each other. They have a fluid hierarchy in which two individuals might like each other and a third individual might like the first one but not the second one, and they'll make it work by using the avoidance principle. They're not going to go close to the one they don't like, but they will take a lot of time to go and spend time with those that they do like. So, once again, something that is rather similar in human beings. One more way in which we and them are very similar. All right. Can we go to the last slide? So, thank you all for coming in and sharing this space with me today. I hope I did a good job of explaining it all. I know there are a few moments where I may have lost the thread, but I did my best and I'm happy with all the information I was able to share with you guys today, despite feeling as awful as I feel. And I'm happy to take any and all questions right now. Yes, Vajra?
Thank you so much, Mirabelle.
You see, madam, like horse, can we do this with cows also?
So I think with cows, there is a genetic component in which human beings have bred them so much and for so long that some parts of their genetic material has been altered. But I do think that all animals and all sectors of nature, just 1 second. You're here shouting at me while I'm giving presentation. Oh, God. See, so while we're talking, this was my background music. So I think that all animals have an innate capacity to tune into things that we have forgotten about as human beings. I think that cows would be very able to do co-regulation and would be very able to install a sense of peace and comfort. I just don't have that friendship with cows. Mine is limited to horses in that therapeutic sense, dogs, cats, and most other wild critters. Cows are one aspect I've not explored as much, but this is a question I will seek to answer. Thank you. Shrikant?
Ma'am, very nice presentation, and I
Thank
would like,
you.
yes, and I would like to know where can we get this information, some brochure, booklet, or book you have written.
So, I can share this presentation with you, and you can get my number from Ganesh or from the final slide.
Yes,
Everybody is most welcome to take a screenshot or whatnot and reach out to me with anything that they would like to speak about in private. If they would like to come and visit the space, I would love to facilitate anything and everything like that.
Yes,
thank you so
Mirabelle,
much.
we'd be hosting this, and information will be available.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Anybody has anything that they would like to share, anything that I said that spoke to you, anything that was unclear, I'd be most happy to answer.
Mirabelle, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very beautiful and heartening, and I love the work that you're doing. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I am someone on the spectrum myself, and I have also felt quite disconnected from the world of humans and really much more in tune with animals and nature. And but I live in Bombay, in a city where everything stuff. So
Excuse my response. I was just thinking of myself living in the city, and I was like, wow, this woman is courageous.
yeah, but like absolutely understandable response. It's my response pretty much every moment. And I would just like to ask you, why is it that, like, we as human beings don't really take the time and opportunity to learn from, animals a little more? And
Mm.
it's like it baffles me. And why do we
So
feel, more like superior?
I think exactly. I think you've touched on something very important there. It's that human hierarchy, because we are predators, it tends to be from the top down. And we tend to think that a better view means a better advantage. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like humans have spent a very, very long time trying to segregate themselves from nature. If you think about it, in the past, if you see the rural villagers, all of them, they will have this really beautiful hut, and their goat is tied outside and the cow is tied next to the shed, and they'll tell you, the moon is looking like this today. In 3 days from now, we'll get rain. There was this intrinsic knowledge that used to live amongst all of us. And slowly, slowly, as humanity has driven to modernize, we have kind of taken this idea that, okay, here is nature, and then here is us. And we choose whether we want to be a part of it or not, and how, and it's all on our terms. And I find that to be quite a big delusion, because if anything is true, is that we are part of nature. We are intrinsically a beat of nature. We are a rhythm of nature. But we are singing out of tune and
Yes,
calling it modern and calling it, aware. And as you say, it's very disheartening to see this, this incongruency between what we know we feel and how we act out as a society. Another thing is judgment. I think
yes,
that as humans, we hold very near and dear this idea of, oh, if I'm at a certain level, I can't be judged,
yes.
or people won't judge me.
Mm-hmm.
That's That's possibly true, but why do we live for other people's judgments? Gifts can also have good return policies. So if somebody gifts you something negative, you can kindly just return policy it and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks.
Yes, yes, it's
Anything further? Wait, my brain
Ma'am,
is.
you have your hand raised.
Yes.
Yeah, Ganesh, I just wanted to, it was an excellent presentation, and I think the
Thank you so much.
perspective itself is so good. I mean, the whole objective of human life, it is said spiritually that one should try to know oneself. And if,
Yeah.
you say the horses know us better than we ourselves know, and that would help
Yes.
us to, if you know yourself, then you'll be able to live in more in harmony with yourself. So I think that's
Yeah.
a very great thing, and I think it works so well. And maybe that's why, why humans used horses for the wars. I suppose that's the best
Yes.
attitude to be in when you're going into war with
Yes.
someone. So I
Exactly.
think that's yeah.
Remember
So
how in India chess used to be tried to be used as a means of war,
yeah,
but then they resorted to humans killing each other. So the horse actually brings in this perspective of partnership, of going above and beyond together for a certain thing. And the
but
horses gave us a tool that we didn't have, legs
that's
that
true.
run really, really fast.
So I wanted to check out one thing with you. You mentioned that they are not connected with the past. The chart was so damningly
I
clear,
like the
in terms of past and the future, what you had shown. Do they build relationship at all, or they just live in the present and there is no
So
relationship?
horses can have up to 35 individuals in their close repertorium of being their close family members. So they'll have up to 35 to 40 individuals who they will actively try to go and interact with. And it has been seen that even if horses don't see each other for 20 years, as soon as they meet, they will know who they are. So they don't think about the past as in, okay, last week this guy came and then we had a fight and then it wasn't so fun. What they will remember is, hey, last time I smelled this smell, there was tension. So it's more of a senses to sensory memory response rather than a, oh, last week kind of thought process. So they do carry memories, but they don't actively explore memories instead of being in the present,
Thank
if
you.
that makes sense. And on the previous thing of knowing one's, my father used to say something. It contains one bad word, so I'm going to ask an apology in advance before I say the sentence, but without it, it is not as punchy. So my father used to say, in life, there's one person you are certain to spend every day with, and that is you. So make sure you're not stuck with an asshole. And yeah, he was right. He was definitely right. Any other questions? Shrikant, I can see that.
Yes, yes. Yeah. If no one has questions, I want to share something.
Yes,
Uh,
please.
yeah, thing was that no, when I used to do meditation and I used to be cool, that time whenever I used to interact with the cats and dogs, they used to come to. But if I was in aggressive mode, no, even when I'm going on the street, the dogs will be very alert. They will try to bark and everything. With my wife, she's a cooler person than me most of the times. So they will not bark at her. So I was always puzzled. And after meditation, when I used to interact, and there was a meditation of giving blessings. So if I was giving blessings to the cat, no, so with whom I was not acquainted. I was not knowing. Even if I go to strange place also, no, and if I'm in that phase, no, the cats will come. They'll rub their body against me. They will go circle around my feet. So I never understood that phenomena. None of my family members understood. But with your lecture, I'm getting some idea because of my
Co-regulation.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for trusting us to share this.
Mirabelle, I have a quick query.
Yes, please.
The nature and nurture confluence is often
Yes.
presented as a dichotomy. It's either, like you said, either this or that.
Yes.
So, any practical ways to bridge this divide, any kind of outlook which would help us bridge this kind of a divide?
So I think that doing these check-ins, self-check-ins are so important, and then noting out the most important points according to our basic needs list. So take those 7 points: safety, ingestion, excretion, body care, motion, association, play, and basically note down all of the things that are important to us in these categories can help us nurture a part of us that is in line with our values in order to build away from something which has become a toxic cycle or our nature. right? So a negative habit can become our nature. For example, my father used to suffer from anger issues. So if he was triggered at like 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, you knew the whole day there would be a shouting match. However, I always found that when I would go to him and I would say, "What do you need right now?" And he was able to answer that question, we were able to avoid the whole argument. We were able to avoid all of the conflict for the rest of the day. So it was very interesting to me how simply taking somebody from a reactive state and having them try to process what it is that their need is and put words to that was often way more helpful than trying to fix the problem. Because the problem is rarely the problem, if you see what I mean. So in nature, there are functional systems. In nurture, there are comfortable systems. And finding a way to make sure that they are working towards each other and that they are clear within relationships means we really build a support system rather than a trigger system that then tries to, bandage it a little bit. And then the next day it starts over. So you can change your nature through nurture. And nurturing yourself, your needs, your basic needs, the things that bring joy to you, can also change the way that you view yourself, life, and the things around you.
That was it. Thank you. That answered the question. Basically, giving the brain reverse feedback and therefore retraining the brain in some
Yes,
sense.
rebranding. Yes. And using very simple methods to do that. If it's complicated and convoluted, there's no point. It
Yes.
needs to be very quick and simple, like my little check-in system of, out of 10, how safe do you feel? Math is usually a very functional way to keep things unemotional, right? Because you cannot compare pain. Pain is pain. Who's to say my pain is greater than yours? That's bullshit. It is pain. We can't start saying more or less. All we can say is that pain makes us act in a certain way, or pain has a certain trigger in us. And then sadness. You can't compare sadness. Sadness is also an emotion. So being able to, instead of going into these very complex processes, keep it simple. How safe do I feel? Have I eaten? Do I need to go to the bathroom? How am I breathing? Am I breathing shallow or am I actually breathing deep breaths? All these things matter. And third, how is my body feeling? Am I fully tense with like a bundle of nerves in my stomach? Have I not slept well in the last week? If so, these are all things that can help you clue yourself in as to where you're at right now, without it being a comparative, without it being a competition, without it being a, "Oh, but you'll never understand because when I say things, you don't hear me." There's one more thing which I didn't touch on today, but I feel is very important. It's connotation. Each and every person will have been raised and grown up with certain connotations to certain events, words, feelings, emotions. For example, for me, the word bastard is not an issue at all. My father and my mother were never married. Still, I'm a person. Doesn't make me any less of a person. But for other people, that word might be very detrimental. So, being able to speak about these things and make sure that our language matches up in connotation can help us avoid hurting people we care about and can help us be more nurturing when it comes to actual support systems rather than just being like, "Oh, I just yeah, I just feel it's this way, so you're gonna have to accept it. No, each person may have a different meaning related to it, and that too should be heard. So, in short, try to make sure that you agree on language with whoever you are supporting or whoever wishes to support you, because that can avoid a lot of silly, hurtful misunderstandings in the present and future. All right.
Thank
Any
you
more
so
questions?
much.
Oh,
Yes,
most
it was very
welcome.
amazing.
You know what? Talking to all of you has made me feel so much better. Thank you. I think that you guys are all helping me beat this illness. All these good vibes are helping me kick this bacteria out of my system. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you. And
And we wish
we
you,
will be
madam.
sharing this recording on Eklavya website. So do
Ooh,
check
share
and
the
watch
link
it
with
as well.
me. I'm
Yes.
curious to
Surely.
watch it when I'm not sick and go, oh my God, I could have explained that better. But thank you all so much for trusting me and for hearing me, and for Ganesh, thank you for inviting me and making this all happen. You were very much the activation energy for me to take up the courage to come and have this conversation. I told
Sure.
Ganesh very honestly that I'm, a little bit awkward when it comes to not speaking to people in person. And he encouraged me and he told me, you know what, it'll be great. I remember
Yes.
sitting in your very kitchen while we made the plan for this talk, and thank you for helping me grow my comfort zone. Thank you
Yeah.
for helping me explore things that are very, very near and dear to me, but I wouldn't have done without you. So thank you
Get
so
well
much.
soon. Get well
Yes.
soon.
We wish you
Yeah.
a
Can't wait
speedy
to feel
recovery too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
And please feel free to follow us on Instagram to get my number
Sure.
and write to me on WhatsApp. I'm here. I'd love to continue to collaborate with you guys. And if there's any way in which I can support your foundation or, make an event happen at Horse to Human with all of you guys in the future, I'd love to do it. So
Thank
please,
Nice idea.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye now.
bye.
Thank you.